the book called The Eight Mindful Steps to Happiness by Bhante Gunaratana. I wonder, Blakey, if you would be able to put that in the chat. Would you mind putting that in the chat? Thank you so much. So that's a book that I'm just referring to. It's not that everything will be taken from that, but I think it's a good. It's really nice to have a book that supports if we have a particular focus for our sessions that you can work with. And for those who are here in person, I'll write down the name after, or you can write it down. And I mentioned last week, I talked about the different kinds of happiness that is possible to experience. We can experience sensory happiness. We can experience the happiness of meditation states, and we can experience the happiness of freedom, which is the highest happiness, nibbana or nirvana, which is freedom from suffering. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about this, how it is, how these Four Noble Truths are articulated, that they are really articulated as a way of learning to discern what can bring us to what choices, what directions can bring us toward more suffering, and what choices, what directions can bring us toward more happiness. Or, I like also to use other words. Happiness doesn't kind of have the, it's not the kind of perfect word for me. I like to think of peace or freedom, liberation, contentment, all of these words. So whatever resonates for you as kind of in your heart, that aspiration that is onward leading in this path. And so as the mind begins to have this capacity, as mindfulness develops, mindfulness is so key. As mindfulness develops, we begin to develop this capacity to discern. And so the Buddha talks about that he begins the teachings on these Four Noble Truths, or some contemporary teachers have explored different ways of titling these teachings. Instead of Four Noble Truths, it sounds so kind of static, like it's engraved in stone somewhere. But something more active and alive might be the four ennobling inquiries, because really these truths are not so much a doctrine as a practice. They're really a practice that we incorporate into our lives. And so, so the first of these ennobling inquiries is just to recognize the presence of dukkha, the word dukkha, which it's a Pali word. And the reason I'm using the Pali word is because it's usually translated suffering, but it actually in Pali has a whole wide range of meanings, which are from unsatisfactoriness or unreliability to real intense suffering. So when, if we're depending on always having pleasant experiences for our sense of well-being, or our happiness, or our ease, we always want the weather to be nice, or we always want people to be friendly to us, that's the sense of unreliability And then, of course, there is the suffering of, like an intense illness or the death of someone we're very close to. So these, so there's a whole range. So dukkha. So to recognize that the nature of being alive is that there is dukkha. It's not that it's all unpleasant or that it's all painful, but it's that even what is painful and delightful, if it's based in conditions, it's unreliable. So, so that is in the four ennobling inquiries or the four noble truths, that's the view. That's the first of the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth. The fourth of the Four Noble Truths is the path to awakening. And that view is, understanding dukkha and also the cause of dukkha, the skillful view, the wise view. That is where we begin. And having that understanding, even if we, it's one thing we all know it's one thing to understand something. It's something very different to live from that understanding. And so, but we can remember, when we feel so disappointed, or we feel, or we judge ourselves, or we judge someone else for doing something or not doing something, that we can't rely on, the conditions of our lives to make us feel grounded in well-being. And so that's where the path begins, is with that wise view, that wise understanding. And then just what we'll be talking about in coming weeks are, there are 8 steps, 8 mindful steps to happiness or well-being. And so, I just talked about the first 2. So recognizing that there is dukkha and recognizing that the cause of it is wanting things to be different, wanting things to be other, wanting things to be according to my preferences, wanting things to always work out, because they don't. So can we have this capacity? I was contemplating this morning on the word dharma, just in my practice, and nature, and how sometimes teachers use the word that really the dharma is nature. And I think it really kind of landed deeply for me that the word dharma really means nature. So what is the nature of awakening? What is the nature of suffering? What is the nature of what it is to be a human being? These are, what we can come to understand. And when we hold preconceptions, when we hold our preferences, when we say, no, it can't be this way, there are people in my family who still on a deep level don't accept that certain people have died, I mean, even somebody that, you know, was 94 years old and that he died. There's a certain, oh, it's somehow, there's this sense of, oh, it's somehow wrong, that it shouldn't have happened. And then, you know, my cousin who died and she was in her 40s and she had cancer. And yes, it's a terrible loss. She was a wonderful person. And it's not against somehow the sense that it's against the nature of reality. It's that we can open to that it's the nature of reality, it's the nature of life for birth to happen and for death to happen. And it doesn't always happen according to our timeline. So, according to our preferred timeline. So wise view, wise understanding, these are the first two. And these are kind of put together under the category of wisdom. And then the other two categories under which the rest of the Eight Noble Truths are put together are sila, which is translated morality, but a better translation is living in harmony and interdependence. So sila means living in harmony and interdependence with life. And so sila and samadhi, which points to meditation practices. So both mindfulness and concentration. So panya or wisdom, sila, virtue, morality, harmony, and samadhi, mindfulness and concentration. So that's the path. And so we're going to be just opening it up over the coming weeks in different ways. And so we are at an hour, a little bit past, and I want to thank you for your attention.